I'm also a lifelong resident of the greatest little city in the world, Falls Church, Virginia, and glad to be here today. What I've noticed about this event today, about this march, and about the events of the last few months is that we're seeing a resurgence of the politics of solidarity. Solidarity, that old Union word, that old Catholic word, solidarity. Our president brought it up that solidarity is not uniformity. Solidarity is about turning spaces into places. It's about turning strangers into neighbors. It's not about always agreeing all the time, but it's about moving from what's in it for me politics to we're all in this together politics. And that's what we need to move towards. And I want to talk today very quickly, 5 very quick ways that we can help move forward the politics of solidarity. So number 1, solidarity, very practical. I'll do some abstract ones, some practical ones. Number 1, very practical. Solidarity is usually about meeting in person. It's not about transferring information to each other or about interacting through the media. And this is something the civil rights marchers of the 1960s really understood. It's about going to meetings, about being part of organizations where you meet people that are otherwise like themselves. They didn't see, they didn't say, Martin Luther King didn't say, let's all just watch Rachel Maddow tonight. They said, no, let's meet at church this Wednesday. They didn't sit around and tweet at each other about what Bull Connor tweeted or about what George Wallace tweeted. They met in person and made plans about working together. And we are at the most sorted we've been in decades, where people are not interacting with people that are of different classes than them. Our schools are more segregated than ever. And it's rare to meet someone that's different than you because we don't have union halls anymore and neighborhoods that are integrated anymore, and we don't have schools that are integrated anymore. And so we need to start rebuilding those institutions where we meet in person. Institutions of solidarity. This is one here today. So thank you to the Hendersons for building an institution of solidarity here today. Number 2, a little more abstract, but is that Martin Luther King taught us that peace and solidarity is not about the absence of conflict, it's about the presence of justice. We need to make sure that if we want to come together, it can't be a fake coming together. It has to be a real coming together where we're meeting as equals. When a quarter of our children is in poverty, that's not the presence of justice. We're not going to see the presence of justice until it's no longer a fact that our black neighbors are 12 times as likely to be in prison for drug use as our white neighbors. We're not going to have the presence of justice when most public defenders that are meeting poor clients practice meet 'em, greet 'em, and plead 'em, where 96%, no one's getting a fair trial anymore. They're doing plea bargains instead. That's not the presence of justice. It's not the presence of justice when at our Congress, for every 35 lobbyists, 34 work for corporate and powerful interests and only 1 work for the public interest. That's not the presence of justice. And finally, very importantly, it's not the presence of justice when in the service and retail economy, which is disproportionately populated by our black and brown neighbors, the minimum wage has stagnated at $7.25 and not reached the levels that Martin Luther King called for in number 7 of the 8-part demands of the March on Washington, which was a $2 minimum wage, which adjusted for inflation would be above $15 today. That's not the presence of justice. Third, how do we fight for this? It's awkward to fight for this. Martin Luther King told us that we need to be maladjusted to the world. If you want to build solidarity, you have to be maladjusted. Back in his time, they were always worried about juvenile delinquents that were maladjusted, and he said, no, be maladjusted. We need to develop a divine discontent. We never must be adjusted until the good society is realized. I will not adjust to segregation. I will not adjust to the madness of militarism. I will not adjust to religious bigotry. He actually called for an international association for the advancement of creative maladjustment in one of his speeches. He wanted us to be maladjusted. Number 4, he said solidarity is not about the particular political projects you have, it's also about deeper things. When I went on the Freedom Rides 50th anniversary with some of the original Freedom Riders, what struck me about them is they wanted to talk a bit about civil rights, but they mostly wanted to talk about agapic love. They said civil rights is our forefront issue, but the thing we're all still fighting for today, in addition to that, is we're fighting for this belief about how we wanted to change ourselves. They had a surface cause of how they wanted to change the world, but they had a cause about how they wanted to change ourselves. I was like, what is this agapic love? What are they talking about? I looked it up on Google. There's a 1962 Martin Luther King speech in Birmingham. Agape is higher than all of the things I have talked about. So he said this is more important than civil rights. Why is it higher? Because it's unmotivated, it is spontaneous, it is overflowing, it seeks nothing in return, it is not motivated by some quality in the object. Utilitarian love is motivated by the quality in the object's usefulness to me. When we rise to agape, it's higher than all of this. It becomes the love of God operating in the human heart. So we're going to have all of our causes, all those causes of the presence of justice I talked about. We're going to have things we're going to be fighting for, and we're going to want to change the world, but we also have to hold ourselves accountable. So if we believe in poverty-fighting programs that we're voting for, we also got to be volunteering in homeless shelters, like Ron talked about here. If we believe in democratizing programs, campaign finance reform, we also got to be raising the next generation ourselves to be civic and not just consumerist. If we believe in a just immigration system, we got to be rallying for that and voting for that, but we also got to go down to Culmore and the towers at Bailey's Crossroads and physically, in person, be there for those communities of immigrants and welcome them to our country. And this takes work, and that's our final and fifth way to the politics of solidarity. It's not inevitable. I want to retire the line, it's 2017, why hasn't this happened yet? It doesn't matter. Things don't happen because it's a year. Martin Luther King said, it's 1963 and this is happening right now. Things aren't inevitable. We have to put in work, and work is time and money. If you're not putting in a certain amount of hours per week and a certain amount of money out of your paycheck per month, you're not putting in the work, and you're just saying that it'll be inevitable. And so I end with this quote from my dad's graduation speech at Antioch College in 1965, where Martin Luther King was the speaker. And this is how he ended his speech. Somewhere we must come to see that human progress never rolls in on the wheels of inevitability. It comes through the tireless efforts and the persistent work of dedicated individuals who are willing to be co-workers with God. It's a holiday today, but tomorrow, let's get to work.